I definitely prefer the last term, the Global South, because all the other terms like Third World, Developing World have a clear direction and a clear implication of how a country should develop and how a society should be. So the Third World apparently refers to some imagined First World, and it's sort of you're only third and you have to become better to become the first. And the developing clearly alludes to a certain model of development and to a certain understanding of modernity that is implicated. So the Global South in this way is a more neutral term, and this is why I think I prefer it. Well, the case of Latin America is a little bit different from the other countries in the so-called Global South, because Latin America, on the one hand, has a very long history of colonial experience, 500 years, but also it already has 200 years of independent history. So it shares, for example, with African countries colonial experience, but in a very different way. On the other hand, Latin America has, ever since Spanish and Portuguese conquest, been a country with a strong tradition of migration from Europe as well as from Africa, and has developed very early into a multicultural or mixed society, which makes it, I think, a very unique experience. On the other hand, this has led to Latin Americans to always ask about what are we, Europeans, Americans, and what about our African ancestry? And I think the term Global South also now will help them to reconsider this and to change a little bit their perspective of not always comparing themselves with either Europe or the United States, but probably of also changing perspective on developments and also they themselves sort of refrain from these terms of this different kinds of modernity or development towards the model, and the model is always still the US or Europe. Actually, what I've seen recently when I traveled to Latin America, if I talk to, let's say, people who are not in the recent academic discussions, they were not familiar with the term Global South. And they always ask, well, tell me, what is it? What do you consider as the Global South? And I think this has to do with this Latin American search for identity, which has for most of the time, especially for the last 200 years, always been directed towards Europe and the US, and a little bit towards Africa in the last decades, and which has not tried to compare Latin American experience of colonial rule and then of independence to other countries in what we call now the Global South. And so I think this term for Latin America is, for historical reasons, a little bit unfamiliar. But I think if I start talking with them about how we understand the topic and why the term and why we are using it, they find it, or many of them find it helpful also to start thinking about their own position in the world in different perspectives.